Yeah, for those that saw the previous video, we shared our faith stories and how we met Jesus and how we met. We met on a blind date. And I wasn't really too crazy about going on the blind date because the friend that was setting me up said, well, she's cute, she's funny, but, and I said, but what? And she, well, she's kind of religious. I said, what do you mean she's religious? Well, she goes to church, and I said, I don't know, are we going to have any fun?
And my friend said, let's go on this blind date. This guy, he's really good, he's kind, he's, whatever, good looking, whatever. And she goes, well, he smokes. And so my frame of reference was like cigarettes, and I'm like, oh, that's a deal breaker. I can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke. It's just not for me. And she goes, no, he doesn't smoke cigarettes. And I'm like, oh. So for me, in my lifestyle, it was like I was dating a bad boy, and it was intriguing. And so I had said yes to this date. And so
however, as we said before, it was the second date, just second date, and she already was asking me about what I thought about Jesus. She bought me a Bible over the next several months. Actually, it took less than that. The reality is, I never believed in the whole love at first sight stuff until we met, and it really was. I mean, that night, it was like, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I can still see the night, because she was with her friend, and they had their own car, but she came out under this light, and it was like, oh, because it had been a blind date, I didn't know what she looked like, and it was like, oh my, so it really was love at first sight. So I really wasn't that spiritually interested right away, but I was very interested in her. And so for the next couple of months, we dated. I was in love. That was in the winter we met. By summertime, I said I asked her to marry me. And of course, she jumped right on it and said yes.
no.
So what was the no about? How come?
Well, I was shocked, and I was also falling in love with him, and knowing that was not a possibility.
You were just falling? I was already fallen.
Yeah, well, and so I struggled because to continue on the relationship or not, it was a difficult decision. And so when he pressed me about marriage, I was like, I can't marry you. And he's like, why not? And I had a really nice Bible, by the way, I want you to know. And I said, I really can't, because you're not a Christian, I'm a Christian, it just won't work. And he took that Bible and threw it against the wall, broke the binding, and said, you love this
and
Bible.
I said, you love this stupid book more than you love me. How can you say you love me? And that's when I threw the Bible, which I guess in hindsight was another good reason she was saying, no, I shouldn't marry this guy. He throws Bibles.
Anyways, but
we broke up for a while, and I was just like confused, distraught, although I had come to the place where she was right, and I knew I really wasn't a Christian. And so by that fall, as I said in my last story,
yes.
She struggled too. But by that fall, God brought someone else into our life that shared the gospel, and so after I got saved, it was probably not even a month or so, and I said, well, I'm a believer now. We can, now we can get married. But she decided I needed to grow.
I said, no, you have to grow first. And so the Bible that I had just fixed the binding on, he took and tossed against the wall again.
I said, what do you mean I need to grow? By the way, because I'll forget this piece later, I did have an anger problem. I mean, I don't mean just throwing a Bible. I mean, I just was one of those guys, sadly, I mean,
short fuse.
I had a short fuse, and one of the first things that others noticed, my sister, family members, that God changed in my life even without asking for it, was my temperament just went from anger, hot fuse, to a calm and a peace and a patience. I'm not saying I'm a real patient person, but I just, quick. Mm-hmm. With my circle of friends, it was like, who is this guy? And it was, of course, all for the better. It was all for the better. So, but she said I needed to grow. So 9 months after that, we got married, and then she said 9 months, just like a little baby, grew to grow, just like a little baby. But even with that, my dad, I'm the oldest of four, and my dad had always wanted me to take over the family business, the business he had, and which I probably would have. But the only thing except Brenda that I loved was Bible studies, studying the Bible. We were in a Bible study group, active at the church. I was being mentored by a seminary student, and it was that I was just consumed by that. And just a few months into our marriage, we didn't know what God wanted for our lives, but I realized I had dropped out of college prior to that. I needed to go back to school, finish college, and just learn more of the Bible. We didn't know what that would look like, but when I think you were in agreement with the whole school thing, you weren't really ready to marry a pastor, and you thought when we got married, you figured I'm going to be, I think,
take over your dad's business and be financially successful, and that appealed to me. And so when we decided he was going to go to Moody Bible Institute, and I was okay with that. And so we were selling assets to, get ready for that transition. And we had an old car, and he was selling it to this young teen, and it had problems. And so David was talking the guy down in price. The guy selling the car was talking the guy down, and his dad happened to be over, and his dad walked in and said, I don't want him to take over the business. I don't want him. He needs to be going to seminary or Bible school.
I'm looking back, I don't know. It was like, but it was typical of, it wasn't just my temperament. My values had just done a complete 180. I mean, it was like, oh my goodness, and by the grace of God. So we moved into urban Chicago. Brenda was working as a legal secretary in downtown Chicago in the Loop, and I was going to Moody Bible Institute and working part-time jobs around that. And our second year there, we had moved to an apartment at a church, and I was the 20-hour-a-week custodian for trading an apartment. And we said, we ought to both go to Moody, and at least for a year, see if we could do this together and afford it. And God let us do it. It was just a great year. Yeah. By then, we were pretty convinced God wanted me to go into ministry. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but we were pretty sure that was God's plan for our life. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, well, then we'll hold off on starting a family till I'm through seminary, because Moody and then going to Trinity Seminary, we looked at I didn't want to come out with debt, and then lo and behold, you get pregnant. Come on.
Yeah. And we went through seminary, had 2 babies, and went to church. We were going to go to a church. We candidated in a church in New York.
In Queens, yeah.
And our moms, which is weird, our moms were really good friends. And so they both got together and prayed against that, because we would be taking away grandchildren. So we ended up finding a church in Chicago. Yeah. And we were there for...
Pastored 2 urban churches, had 2 boys, then 2 boys actually during seminary years. Yeah. And then pastoring our first church, we adopted Amy. She was 2 years old, came into our family. And so 2 churches in Chicago, and we have 3 kids. Our oldest is still single. He's 40 years old, living out in Long Beach, California. And then Philip is 39, 3 grandkids, and daughter Amy is 35, my baby girl, and has they have 3 grandkids. Mm-hmm. And we're glad that we have grandkids and kids that actually like us, and we get to spend time with them, and we're blessed with a family network, and we've been married now 44 years. 45 years will be this year. And
we just figured that out, because I wasn't sure.
We weren't sure with the math, but you get into your mid 60s, and was telling Joe and Josiah earlier. So if we goof numbers and things up, we just tell people we have dementia, and they're fine.
But anyway, so yeah, so it's led us to the present. We're still ministering to churches and.
Yeah, and what? Yeah, and and we just know this is God's call. We love the local church. Anyone who's seen my resume or seen the story, we after 35 years of what I call regular pastoring, 3 churches over those years, 2 in urban Chicago and 1 in northern Illinois, right at the Wisconsin border, where we had Green Bay Packer cheeseheads coming from one side of the border and Bear fans from the other. We were there 19 years at that church, and then almost 4 years we lived in the mountains of North Carolina working for Samaritan's Purse. Was never on our radar, but it was a great blessing, incredible blessing. But it's not pastoring, it's not the local church. And then God put us in touch with this interim work, and we just love coming to churches and whatever the Lord's called us to do there, to encourage, work with the team and the staff, and help the church get as healthy as it can be so they can bring in some new guy that can be there the next 20 years. And as long as you're willing to pack up and keep coming along with me, honey, on this journey, 45 years, we had no idea what this adventure would look like, and it's a far cry from you marrying a small-town businessman and being white picket fence and...
You don't accumulate stuff, which is good. I mean, there's some upsides to it, It's an adventure. Yeah. So...
Yeah. Still no love. Amen.